I'm Wanda Odum Holt, and my sister Linda and I started coming to NOAA 2019, I think. And at that time, we could only go back as far as our, I think, 3-time great-grandfather, Seaborn Odom, who lived in Tennessee. And so we've had this brick wall for like 15 years, and we weren't able to relate to any of you that we knew of. So in this year, the beginning of this year, after I'd retired, I decided to work on Odoms that were in the Revolutionary War. And I knew about Seaborn, that he had been in the Revolutionary War. So I tried to find as many of them as I could. And so there's 29 on the paper that I handed out. And Seaborn's on there, and Daniel's on there, and Levi, which is a fascinating story. I think he's the one that was at Yorktown at the surrender of Cornwallis. And also Sion, or however you pronounce his name. So some of you may be related to these people. So as I was working on this, it was exciting to work on it, to know that many Odoms were involved, and probably others, were involved in the Revolutionary War. But then it also made me kind of sad, because I knew that mine and Linda's line of Odoms, we didn't know if we were connected to any of these people. So back in May, when I was kind of getting to the end of this project, one night I'd been working all day on Ancestry, and I got to the end of the day, and it was time to go downstairs and cook dinner for Jerry, but I had this on my mind, all of these people from the 1700s and all these Odoms, and it just kept in my mind that somewhere in there were my relatives. They had to be. Some of these people had to be related to us, if not directly, then cousins or something like that. So I was downstairs, I'd put dinner on, and then I had this idea. I'd been playing around with ChatGPT, and Bill and I talked about ChatGPT a lot and using it for genealogy research, and I'd used it for some of the research and some of the organizing the information and stuff. But I was downstairs, and I was going to use Jerry's computer, and I thought, I'm just going to pop it into Google Gemini, which is their AI, and I'm gonna put in a couple of our Seaborn Odoms land grants from Tennessee. I looked at them 100 times, but for some reason I just thought, I'm gonna put these in Gemini and just see if Gemini has other ideas that we hadn't thought of. So I just randomly chose a couple of them. He had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 land grants in White County, Tennessee. And so I put them in, uploaded them to Gemini, and it started giving me the information. And all the information was information that I already knew. And I'm like, yeah. And I got to the end, and Gemini said, I've noticed something that maybe you need to follow up on. Did you realize that the same person is on the opposite page from your Seaborn Odom? The same person is on both of these land grants on the opposite page, and the land grants were dated the same day for both Seaborn Odom and Benjamin Perkins. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. I've never noticed that before. And don't they always tell you, check the neighbors? Yeah. I mean, you hear that all the time. Check the neighbors. So I thought, oh, maybe this is a clue. Well, of course, it was dinner time, and I couldn't stop and do it. But when I had time to check it, I went to Ancestry and I just did a quick search for Benjamin Perkins, just picked out a date, that would put him in that time period. And a census popped up that I had seen multiple times and that I had a copy on my desk of the page of the census from Perry County, Mississippi. The census was 1853, was a local state census, because that page had 4 or 5 Odom families, Malachi being one of them, that lived around Benjamin Perkins. Now, I don't know whether Benjamin Perkins this was Benjamin Perkins Sr., and maybe Benjamin Perkins Jr. was the one on the land grants with my relative. But needless to say, I was so excited. Okay, maybe I have found where he's from. So I went on the next couple of days to start looking at my DNA matches on Ancestry. Because for really far back, like 4th cousin and back, it starts getting really hard to figure out who they are and how they're related to you, and it's like a mess. You can't figure it out. So I sorted it by which of these matches have relatives named Odom and mention Mississippi, and just match after match started coming up, and I still get chills talking about it. I'm like, I've found him. Now, I still don't know who his father was. So now Danny and I have talked about, I know that our line and Danny's line are related somehow, but Danny and I don't share DNA. So, but we're close. We're really close. So really doing the Revolutionary War stuff ended up breaking our brick wall, although I wasn't really working on the brick wall, but it led to
another brick wall.
To another brick wall. But the crazy thing, if you think that's crazy, the really crazy thing is, while I was working on this, you find these land grants that people got for serving, especially people who were in the Continental Line, got a square mile of land, 640 acres of land for their service. And so one of the people that got one of these from the state of North Carolina is Dickerson Odom, and so he's on that list. He received 640 acres of land. And so I found the land grant from North Carolina, and I started reading it. And this was in, it had to be prior to 1797, because that's the year that Tennessee became a state.
6.
And so it was a few years prior to 1797. At that time, Dickerson Odom had already passed away. So he either died in the Revolutionary War or he died in the 20 years after the Revolutionary War. But we know he was already dead because the land grant was issued to his heirs. And so his heirs sold it to an attorney who I researched, and this same attorney bought up a lot of other people's land grants and was like a land speculator at the time. So I started reading the land grant, and most of the time you read these and it's like you go to a white oak and then there's a bush, and then, and it's like, okay, that makes no sense. Then there's a river, and there's, whatever. But I started reading it, And the first thing I noticed, it said Davidson County. Well, Davidson County is the county where Nashville is. So, okay, Davidson County. Okay, so this was actually, it's North Carolina at that time, but it actually became Tennessee. So, Davidson County. Okay, so the land grant was for Tennessee. Okay, Davidson County. Then the next thing it said was the east side of Stones River. And I'm like, well, okay, we live on the east side of Stones River. And then it said Hurricane Creek and Suggs Creek. And I'm like, Suggs Creek? That's the creek my cousin and I used to play in when we were little girls. And I kept reading it, and I'm like, this is the land where we lived growing up. And I have 3 cousins that still live in that area. At one time, all of my father's family lived within 5 miles of each other, and they all lived somewhere close, if not in the 640 acres, somewhere very close to that. And I kept thinking, maybe I'm projecting this because I know the area. Maybe I'm, so I had ChatGPT tell me where it is today. And then I even put it into Gemini. And so it said, yes, it's eastern Davidson County, part of Wilson County, and the Buffalo Trail. And Jerry said, there were no buffalo in Tennessee. Well, come to find out there were. And the Buffalo Trail was Stewart's Ferry, which is where my high school was. And so the cool thing is, I don't know who Dickerson Odom is. I don't know that we were related to them. Why did my grandfather choose to move to that part of the county from Middle Tennessee, where Seaborn had his land? I don't know, but it kind of makes you think maybe there were stories passed down that this land was supposed to be Odom land, and I don't know. So, or maybe that's just me, the storyteller, and me thinking, okay. But when I told my cousin, who still lives on that land, when I told her, she was like, I can't believe this. No. So that's my Revolutionary War story.